We're thrilled that you are being recognized, and congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Burkhardt. And thank you, Dr. Seibel. With that, we'll go to our interactive view board presentation. I assume we're turning it over to Patrick.
I'll actually be turning it over to one of our teachers, because who else better to represent than one of our teachers?
Thank you.
No. Good evening. My name is Megan Plarchik. This is my 20th year in the district. I've had one of these boards for a couple of years now, and they asked me to come and share ways that I use it, and really I'm representing the math department as a whole. So there are many different ways that we use view boards in the high school and many different benefits to it. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about four main things: the way it increases student accessibility, how it encourages student involvement and engagement, it enhances teacher efficiency, and it implements top-notch technology. So first of all, student accessibility. And I will tell you all of my examples are math, so if you don't like math, just bear with these next few minutes. So you can see from this board that right now it's a little bit small, especially if you were sitting in the back of the classroom. Well, what I'm able to do pretty easily is zoom in. So one of the things I'm noticing is this is not quite my board and is in a little bit different of a position, but so when I zoom in, the clarity is still there. Sometimes, when you don't have as nice a technology and you zoom in, it gets very pixelated, but right now it's very clear. So if I were doing this confidence interval, and don't worry, I'm not going to do the whole thing with you, but right away, the parameter, I would say P equals, and I look at that and I say, okay, that writing is pretty big, so I'm going to make the font a little bit smaller. P equals the true proportion. And I'm not going to finish that statement. Then for confidence level, I want it to stand out. So I'm going to put that at 95%. Okay, pretend we did a lot of this. I'm going to scroll down, get all the way to the conclusion, and say something like, we are 95% confident that the true proportion of teenage accidents is between this and this. When I'm done, I can zoom back out. My writing zooms with it. And so if I want the students to see the entire problem, now they can see it. So that's an easy way to help students, especially ones that can't see. I can zoom out real quick, zoom in real quick, and it keeps my writing proportionally. Another thing this does is the sound quality is way better than any of the speakers. So let's say that I wanted to show a quick video from YouTube. This sound is at about 50% right now.
Imagine a group of people. How big do you think the group would have to be before there's more than a 50% chance that two people in the group?
Again, I'm not going to make you watch this whole birthday problem video, but you can tell by increasing the volume that in this room, that was easy to hear, let alone in my classroom. I was in a temporary room for a while in what used to be the PAC, And so that wall you could hear between, I would keep my video at about 30% because Ms. Kipple shared the other side of the room. And one of the first few days she said to me, she's like, oh my gosh, we were watching that video with you. And so I had to lower my sound because of such good sound quality. So in this room at 100%, it fills it. I normally keep mine right around 50 to 60%. But again, if I have some of those students that have trouble hearing, I can increase the volume very easily so that it's accessible to all. Another thing that this does is it really encourages student involvement. So for this, I'm going to need another participant. So I already prepped Dr. Cromer that he's going to help me with this. So one way I use this in my classroom is students enjoy coming up to this board because it's a little bit different, it's a little bit new. Also, I have students that want to be teachers. So I want them to come up to my board and get a feel for what it's like and how to write on it. And so let's say we were in geometry class and we were going to do this proof. I asked 2 students to come to the board to work on this. The rest of my students have it on their paper as they're working on it. So Dr. Cromer and I are going to work on this. And my kids like to write with their finger instead of the pen, which works as well. So I told them that's what we're going to do. So as we go to do this proof, I'm going to say that AB is congruent to DB. And you can see at the same time, he's writing. And we can mark that on. And then we go to the next one. And again, we say AC is congruent to CD. And we can mark that on our picture and so on. And then we could keep doing this proof. Again, for everybody's sake, I'm not going to finish the geometry proof, but you can have multiple kids up here writing at the same time. Another way that I use this is sometimes I will put a prompt up here, and now my new classroom has whiteboards down 2 sides. So because I have that many whiteboards, I can get 5 different groups up in my classroom, sometimes 6, working on the problem. So they can see the prompt up here, and now kids are up and engaged and active working on the problem around the room. Another thing it does is it helps to increase teacher efficiency. So first of all, notes for absent students and IEP students. If I go back to that slide, because let's say some student wasn't quite listening or was a little bit behind or needs me to go back, first of all, my writing is still there, which is nice. Second of all, I can take a quick screenshot of it. Now it saves right there, which I don't want it right there. So if I click on it, then I can delete it there. And then let's say that I have like a slide up. I can go ahead and paste it here pretty quickly. That's something I could upload onto Canvas so that my students could have it that way. Another thing that I can do with this is I can save it and then upload my entire document that has all my notes to it to Canvas. I can print. So if I have students with IEP that say that they need the guided notes filled in, I can let them attempt to fill it in class and then print my notes so that they have the full copy of it too. If I have students that are going to be out, then as we do this, I can always email them documents of it so they can still keep up with us. So that is another nice thing. App friendliness. So one of the people in my department, and I haven't tried this yet, but there's an app that goes along with this. And so what she does sometimes in class is if she sees a unique way for students to do a problem, she'll take a picture of it on her phone, and then she can use the app to shoot it right up onto the screen. And so then from the screen, she can now highlight some things that her students are doing. Or she told me one day they were really struggling. And so she was like, oh, I know there's another good problem. And she pulled out one of her resources. She took a picture of the problem, sent it through the app up on the screen. And now the students were able to do that problem as extra practice. So that has a really nice component to it. This board can also stand alone. I chose today to plug my computer in because this isn't my board. And so I wasn't sure how things would transfer. And it was easier to know that if I used it on my computer, I could bring it over and it would be fine. But I don't have to plug my computer. One of the nice things about that is then On my screen, I can have e-hall pass up. So as my students are leaving or have appointments, I can make notes with that. I can have Sapphire up so I can do attendance, all those kinds of things. So it frees my computer up some because this board runs as a computer. And then my last point was the top-notch technology. So I said this is my 20th year. When I started, we were still on overhead projectors. I was part of the Classrooms for the Future wave, which brought in the Promethean boards. Then we went to the e-beams. This is by far the best technology I've ever used with it. A simple thing is when I write, so I just said I write very quickly and messy, but you can read that. When I would write with e-beam or Promethean, especially when I'm writing quickly, it would smear my writing. For example, a lot of my X's would end up looking like that. Not because I drew it that way, but because I was moving so fast among the board that it would make the connection between those. So it's a very clear writing. There's a lot of great tools to this. So for example, if again I was in geometry, I can make all these shapes, but I would rather use some lines. So I'm gonna pick a line. It tells me, okay, that's about 5.8 centimeters. I can make another line. I'll go ahead and basically make a triangle here, giving me each of the measures. Now, let's say we were talking about the angles. If I go to the math tools, I can drag a protractor on here. I can move the protractor to measure that angle. Some of my teachers teach algebra. So let's say instead, if I go to these math tools, I can take this grid. So I can very quickly drop an XY axis on here. Let's say we were trying we'll keep it simple again, to graph y equals x. Well, I can go here and say, okay, let's graph y equals x. And then let's talk about, well, what happens if we make that y equals x plus 2? Well, I can go back to this, change the color. Now it's going to go through that axis, and I can do that very quickly. There's just a lot of, especially in math for sure, because that's what I know. I haven't explored some of the other things. And I'll tell you the truth, there's so much here that I'm still learning. As I was preparing this presentation today, I was finding different tools that I haven't even used yet. Something simple, which maybe is not interesting to you, but very interesting to me, is that when I click on this line, all these different tools came up. And I was like, okay, well, what do some of these do? And so when I was looking at this one tells me that measure. So that is that 7.1 centimeters. Now, that might not look like 7.1 centimeters to you, but that is proportionally. So this line, if I click on this one and click that again, 5.8, you can see the 7.1 stays. And again, not if we took a ruler, but proportionally compared to this line, we have that. And so then if we wanted to talk about the fact that a larger angle is across from a larger side, we could use that protractor tool and measure this angle and measure that angle, and then we have that right there. And so we also, as a math department, realize that we're still learning things, and we've already planned a day to get together and have everybody share different techniques. Because I emailed them when I found out I was doing this, and I said, okay, tell me what you do. And it was just interesting to learn already some things. Like I want to download the app and try the app because it's basically, if you have the app, it's a mini docu camera. So for those of us that don't have them, now I can just take a picture of work or a problem and send it up there. Miss Lair, again, uses it without the computer, and I want to see what that's like and which way I like best for me. A simple thing as it being movable. So, depending on class sizes, Ms. Kipple said she might have to have her board in front of her whiteboard. But then when she really wants to use her whiteboard, she can move it and then still have access. So it just, for me, I have found to be such a benefit for what it does. And so I was asked to share just some of the different things that it could do. And so that's why I came tonight to do that. Thanks.
So I do want to give board members a chance to ask any questions that they might. Ms. Pilarczyk, I appreciate the presentation. That was very thorough. Do any board members have any questions related to that? Yes, Ms. Weaver.
Two questions. I don't know if that's working. The first is the reference to eHall Pass and Sapphire being able to be up on your computer. I'm assuming that's because with the technology, with the overhead projectors, it projects your entire screen from your computer. So therefore, having that information up whilst trying to project is something you don't want to do versus this where you can run the two concurrently.
Yes, or I have to keep constantly freezing my screen to go to my computer to change it. So this allows me to have something different than what is on my computer. Well, the other way, I would have to have both, yes.
So it allows more fluid teaching. And then does it have a Bluetooth capability for students' headphones to be able to read to it? And does it have the capability for a teacher to be able to record their lessons?
It has that ability as well. It also does closed captioning,
That's really cool.
and it does closed captioning with Google Translate as well.
So I had a lot of questions as you were going, and then you just kept answering them right over. So thank you. Fantastic presentation. The audio is amazing, but I had a question. If we were to get audio enhancements in the high school, would you hook that to this or just use it the way it is?
We have the capability of doing either.
Right. Okay.
Jeff Murdell has his tied into his speakers currently.
So in considering this, I tried to come up with the best critique I could. You made that very difficult. The only thing I could think of, and it's pretty much answered, is how is this distinctly different from having a laptop run to a projector and just operating it from your laptop? And I think the answer was evident in your presentation, and that is you're able to stand in front of the work, in front of the class, and deliver it in instruction mode, which you wouldn't be able to do from a laptop. So that's what makes this, to my mind, this one of the strongest pieces. And then the integrations, of course. I mean, that's invaluable, the ability to do all that on the fly and save it and go to it and from it. I think it was very impressive. So, anyone else? The only other question I'd ask is, cost-wise versus a projector type setup, what's the distinction there?
So obviously it is going to be slightly higher. The difference is we're currently buying a projector, then you're buying an airtime on top of that, buying an airtime license, and then you're buying bulbs on projectors. So these we're getting at about a 40% educational discount. We get a 5-year warranty with that, covers everything for the 5 years. So it's roughly about $1,000 more, I'd say, per screen, but you're also getting a 5-year warranty and the much more capable.
And the tactile surface, a lot of times that's one of the challenges is how long they manage to take writing on them. To your estimation, what's the longevity on the actual ability to take a touch? Because if you lose that, it becomes a fancy TV screen.
I've been using these for about 10 years. They keep increasing technology. One of the reasons she's able to type so clear, they now have 40 touch points within the screen. And the best part is we do have a 5-year warranty. So anything goes wrong in any way, we have next day support that it gets replaced.
Okay. All right. I can't think of anything else. Anything else?
I'm
Mr.
just
Gelson?
curious if Mr. Lowe had got any feedback from the other teachers. I know the math department's using them. How many other teachers out there feel this is adequate for them in their daily jobs?
I reached out on, I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday with a short survey to the high school staff with a quick turnaround, difficult to get everybody. Plus, I don't think everybody really is aware of what this is. So I have 25 of 88 responses so far. I think I can send it out again and get some more responses. Most of the responses have been from that math, science, business side of the building, though there have been some others. And I'm going to be happy to share that feedback with you. I don't want to speak for everybody right now since only 25% of the staff's been able to reply. But, people that have used it before, very positive things to say. And people who know about it are very interested in using that technology.
And I know we're not voting on purchasing these tonight, but if I understood the last meeting, which you weren't present at, it was discussed that they were trying to fund this out of the furniture money from the high school renovation, if I'm correct.
That's partially correct. Going through budget, we did find that the former director did actually have budget money for these. So, working with Nate and looking at budgets, we should be able to get probably 80% of these covered by the time the high school construction is completed, just through our existing budget and what's built in it.
My concern is during the last high school renovation that we did, I've heard nightmares of when the renovation was ending, all of a sudden there wasn't enough money to finish buying the furniture that that the teachers actually needed. So if we spend a large chunk of our furniture money on things that were not planned to be budgeted for, are we going to have money to actually buy the furniture that we're planning on getting during the renovation? And me personally, I'd like to see more data from the teachers of which teachers truly feel that these are going to be usable, because then is there potential? I mean, they're pretty easily transported. Could we have so many of them that were in spare that the teachers that wanted to use them occasionally could check them out instead of spending money and putting them in every single classroom now, and potentially looking at, upgrading as the projectors went bad in the rooms if it's only $1,000 upgrade.
So I'll answer your first question first. As far as the budget, I am not planning on using any of the furniture money to purchase these. Or the money we're using is built into the technology budget. So we will not be tying into that furniture budget. As far as the screens, the issue is that you can have a couple spares, but then if more than one person needs one at one time, and we need to replace projectors anyway as part of the high school construction project. So why would we put old technology into a new building is my main thought.
Just another comment. Obviously, this is amazing with math, with all the options with shapes and things like that. But to Mr. Gelsinger's point, I don't know that it would be something that would be used every day in a history class. I mean, is that what we're thinking about? Purchasing one for every single teacher? And what are the benefits of science?
Yeah, so the benefits are exactly what Megan showed you, the ability to use it separate, being able to record all your lessons. You can literally record every lesson and share it out to your students. So if a student's absent, that recording would be present for them to see. So there's a lot of other benefits other than just the board itself.
Is it?
I'll speak a little bit to that. The math department, a few of us were eating in an English person's room. And so we were talking about the board and she started asking us questions. And she shared, she's like, because she just projects onto a whiteboard right now. She's like, I have students come up and they try to do things. And we're like, oh yeah, you could totally, again, project student essays up here, have people come up and edit it. You could then save those to give back to the students so that then when they go to change their essays, they already have the notes that their peers made. And that was just a quick brainstorm with her. I mean, and that's part of what I found when I was doing the presentation, just even more and more ways to use it. So right away, people might be a little bit like, how do I use that? And so that would be some of this. If we're rolling this for everybody, then we definitely would need support, not just the training from the view board, but more so, especially some of us that have been using it. Okay, how have we been using it? How do what I do with math translate over for the English department, for the foreign language department, for some of those. So we would definitely need to build that in to help people figure out ways, because sometimes when you're looking at it first, it's like, I'm not sure how it would use. But just in that little conversation, she was like, oh my gosh. And then she was like, I'm totally filling that survey out. Let me fill out and say that I want one. And that was why. So I think that would be some of it too, would be teachers helping teachers, getting together and figuring out ways to use that.
Something to that. If I could add something, and I think that's a very important piece because this will become part of our process when we do roll those out. There's a part where our instructional coaches will go into the classroom and start and do things to turn it on. Here's where a number of the tools are. But the other part is we need to build, and for anything to be successful, it's not just here's the tool and we walk away. It's how do we build into our system for professional development and ongoing professional development, which we plan on doing. Even within the curriculum writing process, when we're writing, depending on the stages, how are we utilizing instructional technology, not just this tool, but other tools within our system, because that is what ends up, some people may not know how to answer that because they're not quite sure, even in a class, I'm not sure how I would do that. One of our things that we would want to do as we purchase more of these is to get them in front of the rest of the staff to start to get ideas. These are the things that we can do, or you could do, and then just get those sort of ideas flowing and just by example. So just wanted to comment on that.
Okay, I'm going to go to Ms. Weaver, but I do have a follow-up question for you in that regard. So when we have a substitute come in that has never used one of these, obviously that whiteboard is no nonsense. They know what they're doing. How quickly can they pick up how to operate these? Have you taken someone from zero to basic use, and how long does that take?
That is a great question, and that is not just with this tool. We have a lot of instructional tools that we use that we have to log people on, get on, and try and do different things. But
Yeah, so a lot of that is building, we're planning on having a quick flip, quick guide. I mean, if nothing else, it can be used just as a regular projector if it's a sub or whatever like that. There is a guest account that can be signed into as well. So it gives that ability to do a very quick turnaround. Yeah, and there is a full onboarding that we're looking at doing as well it's kind of our whole onboarding process for teachers, subs, and everything. So we are looking at not just from a board standpoint, but overall technology standpoint, if we have a sub, so they know what they're doing when they're going in and they're not going in blind.
Okay. Ms. Weaver?
So actually, I have two things. How many of these do we currently have in the high school?
We currently have 12.
And will we be, as per her comment that this one has cooler gadgets than hers does, will we be upgrading the 12 that we have existing, or will we be and replacing all of them, or will we assume the 12 and replace the remainder?
11 of the 12 are currently the exact same model. There was a update that was pushed out this week that put some new options out there that she might not be available yet.
Well, and I didn't necessarily mean cooler gadgets. I meant in a little bit different of a place. The toolbar is tucked on the edge more, and so I wasn't used to that. So you have to hit it a little bit differently. My board is this same board. I just have the tool board and some of those things in a little bit different of a place, and so I'm more used to that.
And then to speak to your subs, it's an excellent point. Anytime I have subbed in our buildings, I can never get on Airtame. I can never show the announcements because there are specific codes that are often needed. Sometimes you don't have a laptop in your classroom, or if the teacher took theirs or there isn't a loaner there, you have to leave a classroom of students to go get a loaner. So I actually think this may even streamline that a little bit. And then at the beginning of the year, if you commit to sub within the district, the Human Resources Department pushes out necessary trainings that you have to sit through. They are all virtual. But I would assume if something is made, like you were just saying for onboarding, that could be assigned to a substitute in their summer re-upping, and then they would have to complete that if it was put as mandatory. There are some that are optional and some that are mandatory. And then you would be able to push that out so that they are well read in. Because the technology is different in all the buildings. So when you float the buildings, in some of the classrooms, you can walk in and immediately be ready to go. And then in some of the buildings, you walk in and you're like, okay, well, watch YouTube on your phone for SWS Vision because I can't help you. So I think that this would really, that homogenous approach would be really beneficial when you talk about the fact that you often have people subbing or even temporarily filling in.
Yeah, that is a large reason why we're pushing to put these in every location for a standardization concept.
And so not only from that regard, but also in looking at it from a perspective of uptime and reliability. So based on your experience thus far, coming from a place where technology sometimes is scary for a lot of people, have you found where it is relatively reliable when they do patches and updates and those sort of things? There's not a huge challenge that has to be overcome. It's relatively easy, like a computer can be when it behaves appropriately.
Yeah, this is basically a glorified tablet. So it really is a Google Chromebook tablet. So that's the nice thing. Their updates are usually not during the school year. So they usually this is an EDLA model. So it is built just for education. So they typically do not update. This week was an exception. but they typically do not update, major updates during the school year, and they're usually done over the summertime.
Thank you. Good to know.
Yeah, and that feeds right into my question of interoperability, right? If it's a Google, that's our main platform is Google, right? Do we have curriculum that's on iOS and all the rest of that that wouldn't be compatible?
Jeff Mardell is an Apple instructor. He uses one of these currently. He has an Apple TV that hooks to the back, and
Okay.
he does use it. So that does have that capability as well.
Great. Okay, and burnout on our projectors versus the TVs, what's the difference there?
Projector, depending on how long it's left on, you get about 1,000 hours or so per bulb. So then you're constantly buying bulbs. So these are built 5-year warranty. For any reason, it's replaced immediately the next day.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Just clarification, you said about recording your classes. Is it recording your voice or is it just recording what you're doing on the screen?
it can do the voice as well as what you're doing on the board.
So that would definitely be some teacher feedback that we would be interested in, because whenever we were going down the road of audio enhancements, we got a lot of negative feedback about any kind of recordings being done in the classroom.
Yeah, the capability of turning off the voice if you don't want to use that part and just use the video or the screen itself.
Yeah, and I understand your concern, but it's the same as if you were to press record on your live stream, right? So it's a little more distinction in that it's an activating within the software setup versus a remote activation.
And it's 100% in their control, which is the big part.
So if it can capture voice, can it also project voice? Maybe this could be a replacement to audio enhancements.
Well, it can do closed captioning for, for second language.
So as the teacher is giving the lesson though, and they're on a microphone, it could project the voice?
Not currently.
Okay, all right.
So I'm just remembering back to the springtime before you came to us, Mr. Schild. I believe you had mentioned these before, that you had experience with them already quite extensively. So I do remember that conversation before. And I was just picking up something that Dr. Cromer said just a little bit ago, that the features on these seems to be a source of excitement and positivity when teachers see what they can do. And no matter what the department is, it sounds positive. I don't see any negatives either way. So that point there was a good point to point out,
There are features, they're added every day to these boards that cover almost every subject matter.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. Thanks for the presentation.
What is the cost per one board? You never did give us a price for one.
$2,400 for one board. That's with the warranty. That's for a wall mount. It is an additional $390 for a cart to put it on the cart. And that's another part of the consideration. Some rooms would be wall mounted while others would have the capability of being mobile.
I'm sorry, I missed the second figure. 2,400 Walmart.
For a wall mount and for about $400 with tax. Well, we don't pay tax, but
400
with delivery.
Okay, unless there are any other questions, again, I thank you guys for the very thorough presentation. I think you answered everything. You both covered it extremely well, and we're very fortunate to have you here to make this decision easy. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so unless anyone else wants to discuss any further on that, we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. Okay, with that, number 7, additions, deletions, modifications to agenda. Does anyone have anything they wish to alter? All right, seeing none, we'll go on to hearings of persons who wish to address the board. I have 2 people signed in to speak on agenda-related matters. We'll start with Ms. Denise Bunty.
Denise Bunty, and I'm a resident and I'm a taxpayer, and I could go on. But anyways, let us pray. Dear Lord, we just thank you for this presentation and what could be done for our school, for all the teachers, this is a great thing, Lord. Be with us tonight so we have wisdom for our school district. May evil stay out of our school. Protect the school board members, the administration, staff, teachers, students, and parents. Lord, we just thank you for the support personnel that'll be hired. May they have a good impact on our students. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Ms. Helga Anderson. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, that's in general, so that's not on agenda. That's all we have signed in for on agenda. Does anyone wish to speak on agenda-related matters? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed on to action on minutes. We had a pretty extensive set of minutes submitted. Does anyone have any action related to that? Thank you, Mr. Mummert, for submitting those extensively. We'll go on to our student representatives. With that, I'll turn it over to Trinia and Esme.
So I don't have much today because we just started our winter sports, but from them, boys basketball and girls basketball, they're just excited to start their season. Girls and boys wrestling, they have pictures on Tuesday, and they're also excited and getting ready for their first dual tournament. Girls soccer finished with a record of 24-5-1, and this includes post and preseason. And football ended with a record of 7-4.
Girls cross country, sorry. Girls cross country finished their season undefeated, and they had several girls run at states this year. And volleyball also had a successful season where they played to the district level. And swim started this past week. They had time trials and will have an inter-squad pentathlon this Monday where they split into 2 teams, race each other to get more times.
The class of 2025 just finished their sub sale, and they raised about $1,000. Seniors are currently doing senior superlative voting, and our class office is sending out our shirts and deciding on our class song, flower, trip, and motto. Key Club is currently doing American Education Week, and Student Council has begun planning for a snowball dance this February.
Class of 2027 ran Powder Puff this year. That was last week, and they did good. Varsity Club is volunteering at the Mannheim Turkey Trot this upcoming Monday. And this year, for the first time, new National Honor Society, National Art Honor Society, and Triumph Music Honor Society are having a joint induction. It'll be the first week of December. And National Honor Society has already told the applicants if they got in. And Triumph will be letting their applicants know this week. And that's all.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. Moving on to 11A personnel, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Making a motion to approve the entirety of 11A, that's 1 through 4.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Gelsinger. Discussion?
It's pretty common stuff. We have some classroom aides, some PCAs, groundskeeper, bus driver, some coaches for the winter time. Pretty standard procedure.
Okay. With that, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving on to Ms. Bauer, Finance.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to make a recommendation to approve items 11B 1 and 2.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Bauer, second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion?
So item 1 is a recommendation to approve the October 2024 finance reports. And item 2 is a recommendation to approve the October 2024 payment of food services fund bills.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, we'll proceed to a roll call vote.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
11C, Mrs. Weaver.
Good evening. Would anyone like any of these broken out?
Yes.
Okay, which
Number
ones?
2. No, sorry, number 3.
Number 3.
No, hold on.
I think it's.
You want
I'm in the wrong section. Sorry. That's the next section. Sorry. No, they're all good.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I'd like to make a recommendation to approve items 11C 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Weaver, second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion?
So number 1 is a recommendation to approve the first trimester donations to the West Manheim Elementary School Library. There was an attachment included. Then number 2 is a recommendation to approve the agreement between Southwestern School District and Dr. Ray W. Christner, psychiatrist, to schedule and complete an independent educational evaluation, also known as an IEE, for one student to be named by the district with costs not exceeding $5,500. Number 3 is a recommendation to approve the addendum, which is part of a subject to the terms and conditions of the master agreement between Hoffman Homes Incorporated and the School District of Residence, which would be us, for the program services rendered to the student subject to this addendum at a rate of $150 per instructional day while school is in session.